All right, ladies and gents. So the intent of this key is not going to be to walk through every single problem, but we're going to do a selection of problems from each page, and there'll be a full key released. And so the design here is just so if you have some issues kind of solving the problems, you're going to get a sampling of the problems with this walkthrough, and then hopefully that'll help you solve the remaining piece. Right. So with that being said, let's get into it. Okay, so the top four problems here are all basically the same problem. Um, you're given an angle, you're given a side, you have a right triangle, therefore you can use trigonometry to solve these triangles. Now, keep in mind the term solve or to solve a triangles just means to find all the pieces that you don't already know. So like take this first one for example. We can quickly determine the other angle by simply subtracting from 90 because if 90 is already taken up in that right triangle, then we can determine this other angle has to be a 16-degree angle. And so that's pretty straightforward, that's pretty fast. And now our job has to turn to finding these last two sides. We probably want to label these just right off the bat, just so we can not talk necessarily always in pronouns. And what you call them doesn't matter. I'm just going to call this guy X for simplicity, and then I'll drop down and call this long side Y, which means our job now is to solve for X, and then of course to solve for Y. Doesn't matter which one first. Let's solve X first, just because that's the first one we wrote, and therefore that's the first one we'll attack. And so the process solving trig here, which is now hopefully well practiced, we have to do a couple things, some decisions right off the bat. And the first thing is going to be, of course, to pick our reference angle. Because 74 is given to us, I'll go ahead and pick that for a reference angle, although you could work all these problems with 16. It's completely up to you. Now that we have 74 chosen as a reference angle, we now have to write a ratio. And so we have to identify what sides we were given to actually solve this problem. And so I need to find X because that's what I've chosen to find first. And we can note that that's the angle directly across from 74, but not across. It's not the hypotenuse, and so we can call this guy the opposite side. Along the same token, we have this 19 here, which runs into the angle itself, meaning that's going to be the adjacent side. And so we kind of have locked ourselves into this nice ratio of opposite over adjacent. We're still going to write 74 here as an organizational tool. And of course, since they're similar triangles, we can look at over A for 74 as well. So now we have to fill in these pieces. On the left-hand side, let's use the actual triangle to fill in our values, x over 19. And on the right-hand side, well, over A, OA is actually tangent, and so we'll replace that with tangent of 74. So now we have to find tangent of 74, which you can use your trig sheet since it's a whole number value, but I have my calculator handy here. And so the tangent of 74 is 3.487. Okay? And that's still equal to x over 19. Now we can throw this over 1 to help us kind of solve this using cross multiplication maybe a little more efficiently. But in the end, we are just going to solve this now as an algebraic problem. And so we cross it up here. We're going all over the place. It's like that. Okay, so we cross up here, and so we have x to be equal to 19 times 3.487. So use my calculator, multiply by 19, and we get x to be 66.261. And that's a rounded value. And so we can check the validity of that answer really quickly by just asking ourselves, should x be bigger than 19? And the answer to that is indeed yes. 74 is larger than 16 in terms of the angle, so the side across them should be larger, and of course x being 66 definitely is larger. Moving on to solve for y. Noticing that this is a hypotenuse value, we know it should be larger than 66. That gives us a good benchmark while we're solving. If this is not larger than 66.261, then probably something went wrong. But again, we're going to restart by choosing the ratios. We're still going to use 74, but now that we're solving for y, noticing that is now the opposite of the opposite of the 90-degree angle. That makes y the hypotenuse. 19 is still going to be the adjacent side, and so now we have a ratio kind of set as adjacent over hypotenuse, and again referencing 74 degrees. Now, I know at this point we have a lot of trig experience, so maybe we might feel comfortable dropping this first step. I would still encourage you to write it down simply because it does confirm and hopefully lock into your mind that we are comparing two triangles, the left-hand side being this actual triangle, A over H being this other reference triangle that we used to use for the to get off the trig sheet, but now we have A over H being cosine. We can use our calculator to find that value. Again, that's just a suggestion. A over H in this case, adjacent to 74 would be 19, and hypotenuse, which we're trying to find, we're going to use as a y. Replacing values, let's see, 74, cosine value 74 puts us at 0.2756. Yep, 2756. We'll go and throw it over once, so we can do cross multiplication here in a second. We'll carry down y, 19 over y, and now we can go into our cross. So we have 2756 times y is the same as 19. Dividing both sides by 0.2756. We get the y value to be 68.940. Yeah, 940. Okay. And as predicted, we see that this value, is larger than 66. And so it definitely does fit within the scheme of our triangle where the hypotenuse is largest. The second largest angle dictates x, which is the second largest side, and 16 being the smallest angle is 19. And being significantly smaller, we kind of expect that because 16 degrees is significantly smaller than 74. So that's the only one I'm going to do on screen here, but we have the other four that are going to be basically using the same technique, picking a reference angle, picking the right ratio, and then using a good, nice like procedural technique to get our angle values. Our side values. Okay. And so the key that I'll post online will have all of these at the same time. And so even though it's not on camera, the other ones are going to be findable if you download that document. I actually want to drop down and do this one for the second problem on this guide. And this one, we may not solve all the way through. I just want to give you a sense of maybe what we're going to have to do. First of all, we have to note that it's asking us to solve the triangles, meaning that we have to solve all the triangles that are here. And if you remember the structure from the previous unit, you might note that we actually have three triangles here we have to solve. We have the small triangle that we'll have here in purple. Okay, we have the green triangle, which is a medium one. And then I'll do this one in a red highlight. Then, of course, we have the large side. Okay. Now, this is very, very much like the problems above. It just has more steps involved. And so as far as like the attack, we can note that since we have this one angle here at 26.2, and this angle in the middle here has to carry to be 90, the first step is going to be defining angles, but we can actually find those pretty quick using a triangle sum theorem. And so if we take 90 minus 26.2, we end up with this angle right here being 63.8. Okay? And then if you think about 63.8 as far being like the big red-orangish triangle, and realizing that this has to be a 90 here as well, we can take this angle up here to be 26.2. Okay? And then even this guy right here, which is a complementary part, has to be 63.8. And that will certainly give us a pathway to solving this. Let's say 63.8. Okay. That'll give us a pathway to solving this. So we just have to kind of attack this more than one way. We'll maybe have to solve like the purple one first, the green one second, and that should give us enough information to fill in the long side on the red. And so I just want to kind of give you that kind of hint, that kind of note. And so as far as like this video, we're going to bring this one to a close since this first page is pretty straightforward what to do. Just like the first problem, all these problems will go. And so even if I throw in a variation, like you have to solve the triangles, or here I have to find the perimeter, in the end, we're just asking you to find all the information using sine, cosine, tangent, or whatever variation, or if you're still using the trig sheet, those direct ratios. But of course, it's up to you. All right, so we'll stop this video here. Again, there'll be a key posted online that has all the answers on it. You're welcome to use that at your discretion to make sure you have these skills ready to go by Wednesday or Thursday. Thank you.